I'm Oliver Price and welcome to my weekly blog on GDPR. This weekly blog comes only a week before the 25th of May when the new changes to the law with the EU General Data Protection Regulation will come into force. Hopefully all of you are ready for the changes, but if not, of course we're always here to help. Today I'm going to talk about over-consentivisation. This is a word I've made up to deal with the plethora of requests for consent that are coming several times a day, and in many cases some of those are not really justified. Consent isn't really required, and I'm sure, like me, you've got fed up with receiving so many requests through our email, through our phones, and so I'm just going to talk a bit about the requirement for consent. The first point to make about consent is it's only one of 6 lawful bases for processing personal data. You'll see a slide that's come up now that shows you the 6 lawful bases. There are 3 of these which are of really important interest, and they are performance of a contract, legitimate interests, and compliance with legal obligation. I'll explain each of these briefly. So firstly, performance of a contract. If we've got customers or clients, it will almost certainly be performance of a contract. We don't need their consent. We're performing a contract, and the data that we're processing is simply to perform that contract. We just don't need consent for that. But a lot of companies are still getting consent in those circumstances. The second ground is legitimate business interests, and I know that a lot of marketing companies are now looking at this closely to determine where they can, with a legitimate interest, where it's reasonable, where there's a reasonable expectation that they should be in contact with customers or people on their databases. They're avoiding consent in order to do that. This can be problematic. I've had a lot of feedback, particularly about the Direct Marketing Association guidelines. And I'm afraid to say that this is going to be something that will become clearer as the new law comes into place. And that's really why many companies with large marketing databases are presently taking the view that consent to be in touch for purely marketing purposes is, in most cases, the safest route to take. So the third area is compliance with legal obligation. And it's simply what it sounds like. It's complying with some other law, regulation or legal obligation. Classically, this can arise in the case of employment, where we're paying staff, or with customers where we receive payments from them. To calculate our tax correctly and to deal with the Inland Revenue, HMRC, we need to be able to keep records of those things for at least 6 years. We don't need consent in order to do that. And so that's an area that if with staff you're getting consent for, you simply don't need to. So hopefully this is giving you an idea of areas where you may need consent for and those that you don't. If you want to know any more, or would like to receive my practical guide, or just get in touch, please do so from the details following at the end of my broadcast. Lastly, I'd like to wish you all the very best getting ready for the GDPR on the 25th of May. As I said at the beginning, if you haven't already started, get started, do your audits, and if you're unsure, just get in touch.